Okay, microphone and camera check. Welcome everybody. Just let me know in the chat section if you can hear me loud and clear before I begin. That way I don't embarrass myself talking and nobody can hear me. I started the live stream a little bit earlier just because I know many of you have other things to do this evening. So let me know in the chat section, first of all, if you can hear me. Arthur Miller, thank you. All good. Perfect. So my mic and my camera are working. So thank you all for joining. I know I started a little bit earlier, so if I have late joiners, that's perfectly fine. So today I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff, and I'm going to try to make this as quick, short, and sweet as possible. We have to talk about obviously the Zelensky and Trump meeting today. Not today, Friday. Sorry, because there's so many things to talk about today as well. So obviously the disastrous meeting that occurred in the Oval Office on Friday. Also, some interesting statements by Zelensky today on Twitter. Obviously, I have to talk about the dumbest trade war that Trump started today and the consequences of that, and some other news that I need to talk about. But before I begin, guys, let me know where you are watching me from. I'm always curious to hear where you're watching me from, and always great to see like kind of the diversity of my audience. I know that I'm starting kind of late Eastern time, so some of you might already be asleep in Europe. So I apologize. I have to make these streams in evening. Alberta, awesome. Lovely Alberta, Copenhagen, Denmark, Nogatrin, New Zealand. Wow, you are tuning in from very far away. Belgium, Tristan, thank you. Awesome. All right, so we have pretty much all continents. We have Europe, Oceania, North America. That's great. Just missing some other continents. We have Asia and Africa missing as well. Boy, what do I begin with? I first obviously want to talk about Zelensky and Trump. And first of all, like a true Canadian, I must apologize and must say sorry because my last video on Friday did not age well whatsoever. Boy, I was wrong on so many levels. I really genuinely did think that Zelensky would sign a deal with Trump. As I've said in my video, and that Trump will ease off the pressure on Zelensky. He'll shift the pressure back at Russia, and he'll ask concessions and compromises from the Russians. What we saw was the complete opposite, and I think that nobody would have guessed, would have been able to see that type of situation occur. Right? What we saw was just a complete disaster on so many levels, diplomatically speaking. And right, the funny thing is, right when I finished uploading my video on YouTube on Friday, and I started looking at social media, and I was like, oh my God, should I just delete this video? When I saw all of that unfold and the statements by JD Vance, the nasty comments from Trump and Zelensky just being ambushed on all sides, it was just so difficult to watch, right? So, yeah, so, what are my thoughts about it? I have a few points I want to give you guys following the aftermath and what occurred. First of all, props to Zelensky. I know I wrote a post this week and saying that was that the right diplomacy by Zelensky by kind of going against JD Vance and Trump? Probably not. He probably could have been a little bit smoother about it. But right, Zelensky acted like a real, true Ukrainian, right? The Ukrainian people, and I know that because I am one myself, we can tolerate a lot of things. We can tolerate a lot of BS. We can be patient. But when kind of the absurdity reaches a level never seen before, right? When Zelensky is literally hearing pro-Russian comments coming out of JD Vance and Trump, you have to call them out on this BS. And that's what Zelensky did. He did not want to accept the lies that Trump and JD Vance were trying to push on Friday. And he showcased to Trump that values and a fundamental position, Ukrainian positions are on this war are not for sale, right? He's not willing to sell out and say, yes, Mr. Trump, Putin is actually a very good person and he's very, very much so peaceful person. He's interested in true peace. Yes, you're so right. Thank you, Mr. President. Like, imagine how that would look within Ukraine, how the Ukrainians would feel betrayed hearing Zelensky go along with Trump and JD Vance. So he didn't sell out. And as much as Trump tried to showcase himself as a winner out of this, shouting match towards Zelensky. Most Americans were absolutely stunned at the childish and pro-Russian behavior coming from JD Vance and Trump. And I'm not going to give you a rundown what happened, but just the sheer fact that it all started with the reporter, God knows what his name is, who asked the question to Zelensky, why aren't you wearing a suit in such a rude manner? Right? You know that this was a planned ambush by the Trump administration. Like, you don't just let these journalists ask such rude questions, disrespectful questions, and then expect them to continue being present in these very important meetings. This was certainly a planned ambush by Trump and his administration. And the fact that they just went all in attacking Zelensky, it was really an embarrassing moment. I'm just going to read some of your comments here. Hi from Montreal, Manitoba. I just read that Trump is going to announce tonight that the mineral deal is back on. From Chicago, by the way. Yeah, again, I'm so done with like this back and forth. Now the deal is back on, and then tomorrow, you know what? We didn't like what Zelensky said or did. It's not back on the table. Actions do speak louder than words. I am seeing after this dumpster fire that occurred on Friday that Trump is really trying right now to alleviate what happened. He tries to really put it out and extinguish this fire very quickly. You're seeing that from the Trump side, they're trying to mellow out their position, right? That now it's not really an apology that we need, but we need Zelensky to be serious about peace. So you're seeing that they're kind of retracting their position a little bit, but again, actions speak louder than words here. And what happened on Friday was really an embarrassment, the worst of the worst embarrassment for the United States and its entire history, in my opinion. So why did Trump do this? He perceives Ukraine as weak. He felt like he wanted to get this peace deal done as quickly as possible, and he thought that pressuring Ukraine to give up, to blackmail them, and bullying them into submission would work, and that Ukraine would concede, say, "Okay, Mr. Trump, we're giving you everything that you want. We're going to sign a peace deal. We're ready to do anything you want us to do." He really thought that he could do this on Ukraine, and that he would get his very quick peace deal that he was announcing. Because remember, he said that within 24 hours of him coming into power, or even before, he'll finish this war. He'll force Ukraine and Russia into a deal. Now, this 24 hours quickly stirring into 10,000 hours plus. So he's getting very frustrated by how slowly things are moving. And of course they are, because this is a complicated matter that you can't just solve in 24 hours. And so he underestimated Ukraine. He underestimated Zelensky. And it's clear at this stage that he hates Zelensky for various reasons. The fact that Zelensky represents a roadblock, an obstacle to the ambitions of Trump, but also the whole impeachment story from a few years ago. That's why he's also pushing and calling Zelensky legitimate, a dictator, because he wants to deal with another Ukrainian president. And so he's underestimating the Ukrainians on all levels. And again, as Zelensky said, if Ukraine didn't capitulate at its weakest moment back in February of 2022, why would Ukraine capitulate and be pressured into submission today when it is arguably in one of its strongest positions ever, right? The amount of weaponry that Ukraine received. Yes, it is still vulnerable to the US aid, without a doubt. But Ukraine is, it's day and night in comparison to February of 2022. Its military capabilities are 100 times bigger and better compared to February 3 years ago. So, some other comments. Hi from Germany. Do not worry too much. Europe will step in and Russia will ride home on their donkeys during the next 2 years. Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit about this because that will bring me to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is, of course, Europe stepping in. Another thing that I really enjoyed seeing Friday is, speaking of which, is the solidarity and unity coming from not only Europe, but other Ukraine allies, including Canada, Australia, even Turkey. And they all presented their unity and solidarity towards Ukraine. Very, very important following this disastrous meeting in the Oval Office. Because I think that many of these leaders saw themselves also being, at one point of time being disrespected by this Trump administration. Even look at Justin Trudeau and how in the last few weeks, Trump has been pretty much belittling, berating Trudeau, calling him a governor, calling the Canadian people as part of the 51st state, or Canada the 51st state, right? Like the level of disrespect is so high here. And Canada is not the only country that the Trump administration has disrespected. We also know with Macron coming last week, and Trump's outright lies during the conference that they had in the Oval Office, where he said that Europe is loaning money to Ukraine, and Macron had to correct him. And then Starmer as well, he made some kind of passive aggressive comments about the funny accents of the British, right? And so you can only imagine what other things he said behind closed doors. So you can see that many of these European countries and other countries around the world sympathize with Ukraine and Zelensky because they saw themselves in that same position as well, where Trump is just disrespecting them, and he doesn't care about manners, the right procedures. Right, for him, it's kind of this typical caricature of an American that simply doesn't have any manners, and so they sympathize with Zelensky because of that. And we've seen such unity in the last few days from Europe. And honestly, I will have to say that it is so good to see that this happened in front of the press. This disaster was not something that occurred behind closed doors, but it was for everybody to see. Everybody that is rational, normal, was in shock and stunned at how embarrassing this whole moment was. So, this brings me to the other thing I wanted to talk about. And before I continue, I want to read some of your comments. We have so many things, so many comments here. Hi from Finland, UK. Yup, Trump is now trying to leave the door open. He's a whole lot bluster and thin skinned, but hopefully the shiny mineral deal in the role of his in the UK, he'll pander to a wider audience. Considering you say you are from Canada, why do you not complain about the high tariffs Canada has had in place for longer than you have been alive? Please clarify. High tariffs that Canada has had in place for longer than you have been alive. What does that mean? There have been no tariffs on America. And if you've been following the news recently, it's the US that started this whole trade war against Canada. And our economies are so intertwined that Canada would never think of starting a trade war with the United States. Is there a little bit of protectionism? Of course, on both sides. But when it comes down to tariffs, we know who started this entire war. It was definitely not Canada. And it's like shooting yourself in the foot. And I heard this from somebody actually. I'm shamelessly stealing this line, but it's like what Trump is currently doing is like if you bought a train ticket, you pick up a gun, you shoot yourself in the foot, and rather than still going to the place you need to go to by using a train, you decide to walk with your hurt foot that's been shot by yourself. That's how Trump is operating right now. Anyways, let me talk about the other thing. And quickly after what happened Friday, Zelensky flew to London for a European summit. And this is where things get very interesting, because this is where we see this unity from Europe and other NATO allies coming together. So this European summit that occurred during the weekend, we saw an alternative French-British peace deal being proposed now. And this is what Zelensky came out with today with his statement, talking about essentially I'm going to read what he wrote. I would like to reiterate Ukraine's commitment to peace. None of us want an endless war. Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than Ukrainians. My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership. Of course, you always have to stroke his ego, unfortunately, to get a peace that lasts. We are ready, and here's the important part, to work fast to end the war. And the first stages, which is, again, this peace proposal by Europe, the first stages could be the release of prisoners and truce in the sky, a ban on missiles, long-range drones, bombs on energy and other civilian infrastructure, and truce in the sea immediately if Russia will do the same. Now, in the chat section, you guys can let me know if you do believe that Russia will do the same. I think you know the answer to that question. But again, we're seeing that Europe now is proposing their way of negotiating a peace deal, not something that the U.S. is leading and mediating, but something that now Europe more and more is taking a charge and is now pushing for realistic kind of negotiations, realistic proposals towards Russia. Ukraine stops using its long-range kamikaze drones on Russia. Russia does the same. Ukraine stops firing missiles. Russia does the same. Of course, we know that the Russians very unlikely will accept that, but that is, again, the first stage. And we really value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence. We remember the moment when things changed when President Trump provided Ukraine with javelins. Yes, Trump did provide javelins, but he also told the Ukrainians to not use them on Russia. They could only use them in practice grounds and training grounds, but not on the front line. That's an important asterisk. We are grateful for this. Our meeting in Washington at the White House on Friday did not go the way it was supposed to be. It is regrettable that it happened. And then he continues this way. It is time to make things right. We would like future cooperation and communication to be constructive. Regarding the agreement on minerals and security, Ukraine is ready to sign it in any time in any convenient format. We see this agreement as a step forward towards greater security and solid security guarantees. And I truly hope it will work effectively. So we're seeing, first of all, that there is the first proposition of Europe for following the summit. And the most important thing, again, is that Ukraine continues to showcase that it's not selling out and backing down to the demands of the United States. The United States is a mere piece of that puzzle. They're not going to be the answer to the war. And, Zelensky, of course, embodied the Ukrainian mindset of we prefer a scenario where we continue to have a good war, if you may call it that, than a bad peace, where we're forced into a peace which we will hate, and undoubtedly the war will come back inevitably. So too much has been sacrificed by the Ukrainians to just give up now. And Trump also managed to really do the complete opposite. Rather than, making itself look like a mediator, oh, we're working here, we want to put Russia and Ukraine back on the table, he divided the negotiating table between US, Russia on one side. It's clear, right, that Trump loves working with the Russians. And on the other side, now it's Europe and Ukraine. So the United States can sign any deal they want, agree to anything they want with Russia. But the problem is that Europe is not going to agree to it. And Europe has clearly showcased this week that they are not going to agree to whatever US is pushing if it doesn't involve security guarantees for Ukraine. A clear end to this war that is fair and just for Ukraine as well, which forces Russia into compromises. If that doesn't happen, then there is no deal. And Trump and Putin can talk all they want over the phone. They can say all that they want about one another, that they love each other, but no deal is going to be made. And that's going to be frustrating Trump, of course. So he's managed, instead of making this kind of a mediation, he completely pushed himself on the side of the Russians. And now whatever he does, right, that remotely looks like a pro-Russian move will be instantly refused by not only Europe, but Ukraine as well. And that's why Zelensky really, I think, did a great move here by not backing down and making himself look like he's a US puppet, right? That also plays into the hand of many countries that saw Ukraine as kind of this puppet, right? That were kind of skeptical as to supporting Ukraine, right? These non-NATO countries like Brazil, even China, many countries in the global south, as we may call it, and were skeptical of Ukraine. They saw that, Ukraine is actually sticking to its principles and they're not selling out because Trump is, pressuring them. And what is also great to hear here is that the unity is as strong as ever. And today, the European Union also announced that they are rearming Europe, and there's going to be a new $800 billion or 800 billion euro defense plan put in motion over the next few years to rearm Europe. So there is an understanding now that there is no going back, that the US has become an unreliable partner, and that Europe needs to do everything possible to reinforce its position. And, they can't count on the United States anymore. Because as we've seen, JD Vance, he seems to be the driver of all this disrespect towards American allies. Because even today in an interview, JD Vance had some comments about the UK on Fox News, which he then refused to say that it was his comments. But he said essentially that the US stake in Ukraine's economy was a much better security guarantee than 20,000 troops from some random country that hasn't fought a war in 30 or 40 years. So that's to my UK people. That's the disrespect that JD Vance continues to do towards several nations. Let's not forget what he said during the Munich Security Conference, where he essentially, spit in the face of Europe, saying that you don't share the values of the American people, that you're disrespecting democratic values, right? It was a really big cold shower. So let's read some of your comments here. Blah blah blah. So many comments. Oh my god. Freedom, hit the like button, folks. Yeah. So if you haven't done so, please like the video, the live stream, and also subscribe to my channel if you're a first time viewer as well. How can they have lost when Russia hasn't won? Doing a bit of trolling. Q-Man is a donkey, right? But it's freedom of speech, right? I'm allowing even pro-Russians or even trolls to be commenting here. From one former colony from New Zealand, I think Canada could do a lot better for itself. Why send unprocessed oil to the States when you could be refining it yourself for a whole lot more money? And I'll get to that as well, because that brings me to the other topic that I want to discuss, which is, of course, the dumbest trade war ever. I'm a Canadian that can handle the truth. Hey, from Arizona Oblast. Thank you, Cheryl. Anyone else worried that Poilievre doesn't care about Ukraine? It's a high possibility. Poilievre is the current leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, and he more and more seems to look like a mini Trump, right, from Canada. And he has used similar slogans from Trump in the past, and he was very popular in the last few weeks before this whole trade war started and before Trump came into power, because he was kind of this opposition to the Liberal Party, right? And many Canadians, without a doubt, are frustrated with the Liberal Party under Justin Trudeau. Thus, why he resigned. The economic policy that he's been pushing for the last few years have been ineffective. Immigration policy, right? It's simply ineffective when you're pushing and opening the floodgates for over 1 million immigrants per year. It's unsustainable. Canada simply doesn't have the infrastructure, the institutions to support that. And so Pierre was playing along that, right, at this effective opposition. But when push comes to shove, and now he has to face a moment of crisis when clearly the United States, the current US government, is attacking Canada, not only with economic war, but now also its sovereignty, putting into question Canadian sovereignty. You see that Pierre is fumbling. He isn't really sure which position he needs to take, because a lot of his base, and I'm going really deep into conservative politics in Canada, but some of his base are actually diehard Trumpists in Canada. And so he needs to look, good to them, but also good to the other conservative voters. They're also Canadian patriots. And so we're seeing in the last few weeks that the polls are becoming narrow and narrower for both the Conservatives and the Liberal Party, because, of course, Justin Trudeau is going to leave in a few weeks. And very likely that Mark Carney is going to be the new leader of the Liberal Party. And he seems to be a very capable leader. He's an economist. He has handled the Bank of Canada over a decade ago. Then he went to the UK. Many of them might call him a globalist, but he certainly does know his stuff in terms of economy. And that's exactly what Canada needs, somebody that is good with economic matters. So, yeah, I do share your comments and your beliefs with regards to Pierre and him not really care much about Ukraine. But again, many of the conservative voters are also Ukrainian, right? From Alberta, the Prairies, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. So I think that he won't be able to really disregard the Ukrainian question either. For the chess, that's what MAGA is saying to themselves. Yeah, and they'll find out very quickly, the MAGA people, what kind of game they're playing, and that tariffs work both ways as well. That their egg prices, they're already disastrous in the United States, are only going to it's only going to be worse. At this stage, it's $10, I think, for a dozen, to $10 US. I can only imagine, the price in a few weeks if this continues for many other groceries. Hey, from Ohio, Russia will pay. Thank you, Greg. Wake up call for Europe. Pierre has always given strong support for Ukraine. I hope he will continue to do that, even if he's elected. I'm thinking, Chris, that Trump is definitely in Russia's pocket. So he is and will only do what is in Russia's interest. Take care. Thank you, Mick, for your comment. Thank you, Surfades. Всіх вітаю. Дякую. We have idiotic congressmen calling Trudeau governor. Yeah, I mean, just the sheer disrespect, right? Like, to me, it's just, I can't understand why this is being done, why everybody or most of the Republican Party, the congressmen are going along with this. There is nothing to gain from a trade war and also swallowing up Canada, which is never going to happen. Let me remind my viewers that that's never going to happen. Hi from Portugal. Thank you, Romeo. Slava Ukraini. Kenzuk. Now, I absolutely agree. Canada, the UK, New Zealand, Australia need to bring one another together, get together, and form a stronger tie. We also know the Five Eyes. Apparently, Canada is being pushed away. This is an agreement between the United States, the UK, kind of the Commonwealth countries to share intelligence together. And apparently, Canada is now being briefed by the United States. And I wouldn't be surprised in a few weeks or months, the UK is also going to be pushed aside. Australia, New Zealand as well. So absolutely that we need to form a new alliance that doesn't include, unfortunately, the United States at this stage. There's always going to be a door open, but Trump is certainly not going to be welcome because of the way that he behaves right now, and he treats his allies as absolute garbage. 25% tariffs selling on eBay starting today from Canada. Yeah, everything is, from what I understand, 25% tariffs on pretty much all goods. So that is not just targeted tariffs, it's pretty much everything. Okay, so let's talk about the tariffs because that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. And let me just preface before I begin that there's been a series of threats by Trump over the last few months, right? That's not the first time that Trump said the tariffs are coming in, and then he retracted shortly before the end date. And you know, the very last moment, Canada last month said that, oh, we agree to border tsar, that we're going to implement a $1 billion defense border protection agreeing with the United States. We're going to reinforce the border, make sure that that fentanyl isn't coming through. And again, the numbers are so negligible from Canada, right? Like it's not even a question that it's negligible. Like the fentanyl that was crossing Canada to the United States is just in a maybe a few 100 kilograms at best. And same with illegal immigration coming from Canada. We could, I think it was in a few thousand in the last few years, right? It was just a casus belli for Trump to claim kind of emergency situation. That's why we're imposing tariffs on Canada. But there is absolutely no reason for the US to do this. So officially today, the tariffs came into effect on 25% tariffs on pretty much all Canadian goods. And Trudeau obviously had to retaliate back with $30 billion worth of American goods as this initial tranche, and promised 125 billion more in the future in 3 weeks' time if this continues. He also claimed and threw shade at Trump, saying that this is very dumb to attack Canada like this, given the serious ramifications for American workers and consumers with higher prices on everything. And that is absolutely true. This is going to be sticky as well. So as soon as you're seeing the grocery prices going up, they will stick. They will not go down. As you've seen during COVID, most of the prices went up and they stuck to that level. In terms of car prices, furniture, grocery prices, like it's not going to go down. And company is going to make a killing, but the regular ordinary American is going to be hurt. 4D chess. That's the 4D chess that Trump is playing. So, of course, food, car parts, fertilizer to pharmaceuticals and paper products, aluminum, raw resources that the US is heavily dependent on, all that is going to be tariffed. And the price for everything is just going to go up. Additionally, also Premier Doug Ford, who just got reelected with a strong mandate. I'm not a fan of his, but I am a fan of how strong he is in terms of his position against the United States. He ripped up the $100 million contract with Elon Musk and Starlink for Ontario, for the Ontario rural areas. So that is ripped up, no more. He will impose, along with Quebec, that is likely also considering the same thing, a 25% surcharge on electricity that is supplied to the United States. And to my American viewers, let me remind you that Hydro Quebec and also Ontario Power provide the vast majority of power and electricity to northern US states. Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, New York, Massachusetts are heavily dependent on that cheap electricity that Canada is selling, especially from Quebec. Quebec is producing an insane amount of cheap energy because of its vast network of hydropower in Bay James and the northern coast of Quebec. And so that is going to hurt you so bad that you won't even believe. Uh, that was a good deal for both, right? Quebec was selling its surplus, and Ontario was selling its surplus energy at a very good price for the Americans. And now you're going to see a massive surcharge on everything. That's going to hurt the everyday American again. And of course, that has been all going for the last few months. But a massive boycott is currently happening in Canada of all American products. And I can attest to that. I'm doing the same thing. Millions of Canadians right now are boycotting, whether it be grocery stores, online shopping, subscriptions, anything that is remotely American or backs the Trump administration. Canadians have been canceling subscriptions and stopping their purchases of American goods over the last few months. And most Canadians have also canceled their trips to the United States. And I can attest to that because I was supposed to go to New York State this month, and I canceled my trip because I don't want to be, unfortunately, as much as I love the great state of New York, I don't want to be supporting right now a country that is so hostile towards Canada. And millions of Canadians are doing the same thing. And as a matter of fact, the Americans now are feeling it. Many travel agencies in the United States, the hotel industry, are feeling it. They're saying that our revenues are dropping, 20 to 30% revenues are that we can expect to drop a 30% of our revenues this year is disastrous, right? And we're already seeing a lot of companies giving discounts for cruises in the United States, Disney World or Disneyland in Orlando, right? Giving like really big discounts for trip packages. Like it's really being felt in the United States right now. But the rumors seem to indicate that Trump could back down tomorrow. We'll see. There's some rumors saying that Trump, and of course the markets, a massive downturn. I shouldn't say massive, but a 3% drop in the last few days of the S&P 500 index, and also the Dow Jones 3% drop. And so already the markets are reacting negatively. Of course, who would have expected that? Everybody expected that to happen. So, Doug Ford spoke well. Sally, my premier, has already kissed the ring. If you're talking about Danielle Smith in Alberta, if I remember correctly, she came out today with a statement that she does support Trudeau's actions. Although, unfortunately, I do agree with you, Arthur. She's been a very big disappointment from. I've heard also the whole scandal with Alberta Health Services that the conservative Alberta Party is currently trying to downplay. But she certainly is more of a pro-Trump premier than anybody else in Canada. But thankfully, she came to her senses today. We'll have to see over the next few days what she does. What happens when New York lights go out? Well, it's not going to happen, but certainly, there's going to be a massive increase of your electricity bill for any New Yorkers over the next few months if this continues to be the case. Again, I want to highlight the fact that Canadians don't want to do that. We want to continue working with the United States. We want to continue having great economic ties because it's so beneficial for both Canada and the United States. When Trump says nonsense that we've been so badly treated by Canadians, who signed that new trade agreement in 2018? Should I remind Trump that he was the one that renegotiated it and said it was the best deal ever, only to say now that we're the victim and somehow we've been treated very unfairly by Mexico and Canada? Boo hoo, says the leader of the most powerful country, the most powerful economy of the world. Minnesota, Michigan, too, 1.5 million customers in those two states. Yeah. Exactly. There's no win-win there's it's a completely stupid situation right now, right? Canada has everything to gain to sell that cheap electricity, that surplus, and the Americans are very happy with it, right? We're winning on all sides here. This trade war has, will be remembered in history as the most dumbest thing ever done by any US administration ever, without a doubt. Yeah, Fracas, Quebec has massive hydropower installations. Yeah, and we have to thank the previous Quebec governments for their leadership, their long term vision in building these hydro plants, which, Quebec continues to build all across its vast territory. Most people in New York voted for Harris, I think. Yeah, but still, upstate New York, it was all red. If you look at the voting in upstate New York and outside of New York, Long Island voted for Republicans mostly. But of course, New York City is more Democratic. But still, a large population within New York voted for Trump and the Republicans. Awesome. Keep the pressure up. And again, like Canadians are not going to stand down and just take it. So, as I mentioned, we're going to continue pulling the pressure and hoping that this is going to end on a good note. So apparently, as well, Politico mentioned today that apparently the National Republican Congressional Committee chief says that there's going to be no more town halls. So the Republican congressmen and congresswomen are afraid of facing the music that undoubtedly will face them very soon, and they're further isolating themselves in their echo chambers of applauding Trump. Very good, Mr. Trump. Continue hurting us. Continue hurting the ordinary Americans. But we don't want to face the music. We don't want to meet with our audience, the people that elected us. Screw those peasants, right? Buy Australian products, and we absolutely will work with the Australians. That is an absolute must. We have to do it. As I've mentioned, the economic ties between Australia, Canada, and New Zealand need to be strengthened. The UK as well, and Europe, and we're already seeing a lot of negotiations between the Canadians, the Canadian leadership, and other countries across the world, and we're kind of turning away. If there's a silver lining behind this, is that Canada realized that we can no longer rely on the stability of the United States, whereas it was guaranteed even a few months ago. Now it is no longer guaranteed, and that Canada needs to shape its own future. The future government's already understanding the necessity of also increasing military spending, especially for Canada. It's been very, very low. And if there's one thing I agree with Trump is that one of the very few things is that indeed Canada has not been pulling its weight with regards to military spending. And we have to, because we see all the threats from the United States, from Russia, from China, the Arctic, of course, that's going to be the big future war, or the future challenge will be the Arctic, where it's up for grabs. And over the next few decades, those passageways are going to start melting, and new trade routes are going to open up. New mining opportunities are going to open up. And that's why Trump is being so aggressive right now with Greenland, with Canada, with Denmark, with Russia to a certain extent, right? He tries to get good deals going because he sees that as the future, for future massive gains for resources, because, of course, the war of resources will continue. Buy South Korean military equipment. I guess so. Yeah, Hyundai produces a lot of good equipment, but unfortunately, South Korea has been disappointing, to say the least, in the way that they conduct geopolitics right now, right? Like with regards to North Koreans right now fighting alongside the Russians in Russia, and possibly in the future they could even enter Ukraine. Um, the South Korean sort of answer is nothing short of pathetic, right? Yeah, they sent a few advisors, a few translators, but Ukraine needed the stockpiles of weaponry from South Korea. Ukraine could use South Korean tanks and artillery and other great military equipment that they produce, but they simply refuse to do that. But hopefully in the future, South Korea is going to step up. So I do agree with you that South Korean military equipment has a lot of positive and they've already sold a lot to Poland. As a matter of fact, Poland bought a lot of South Korean military equipment. So, of course, Canada can certainly buy a lot of equipment from South Korea and also Europe. And that's I talked about in my previous live stream that Canada should reconsider purchasing the F-35s from Lockheed Martin, and they should go with the Gripens, with the Saab Gripens being produced in Sweden. I think that would be a massive blow to the U.S. defense industry. And another thing, by the way, is that the U.S. defense industry, their stocks, are not doing so well recently. They're all in the red, whether it be Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, what is the other one? General Dynamics. They're all not doing so well in the stocks right now. And the European defense stocks are actually going up in the last few weeks as well. So we're seeing a shift where countries are now rethinking their positions. Should we invest in the US defense industry, where the US has pretty much an absolute say to everything that we can do with these weapons? We need to rely on ourselves. And so I think that there's a shift now as well that we can no longer rely too much on the United States for procurement of weaponry and air defense systems and tanks, etc. Australia military spending should be at least 10% now. It won't happen. Yeah, I agree, but there's also the pragmatic um, perspective is that Australia has a smaller population. I think at this stage it's what 30 million people, and so it needs to kind of find a balance. But we're seeing a more aggressive China as well. The biggest right now, the biggest opponent of Australia is China with its aggressive actions in northern Australia, trying to build up more influence, more bases, and they're trying to really kind of attack Australia directly. Even that could happen, who knows? So there's a fine balance here where we're seeing that Australia has to play alongside with the Americans, right? In terms of geopolitics, they still need to be an ally with the United States because the US provides a lot of security guarantees for Australia. But Australia also needs to start becoming more and more independent in their own ways. Um, but yeah, Australia definitely needs to increase its military spending. As a matter of fact, any country right now cannot rely on the United States anymore, unfortunately, which is fair. Let me say this. I need to say this. It's clear that the US has given up on this role of being the global sheriff, right? Whenever there's something that's unfair, unjust, you run towards the sheriff and tell him, there's a bad guy out there. You need to deal with him. Unless you pay up, that sheriff isn't going to show up anymore. And so, fair, right? If that's the position that the United States wants to take, fair enough. But you can't play a role where you're one side, you're still pretending you're the sheriff, and on the other side, you're also playing the bad guy, which is what Trump is doing right now. He's still acting like we're still this democratic country that is doing everything like by the rules, and on the other side you're actually trying to extract the maximum amount of benefits and a zero sum game against your allies. That's not going to work. And so that's the game that Trump is currently trying to play right now. So that global sheriff um, position, the United States has lost it, and they don't want to be part of it. They don't want to be investing into it anymore, and that's fair. But they can't pretend anymore that they're still kind of the relevant global superpower that's going to save and help everybody. Ukraine matters. Thank you, Georgie, for coming through. Hey, Chris, how are you holding up? But very well. Thank you for tuning in. Big thank you for your support, guys. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to Ukraine Matters and his channel. He gives a lot of great updates, and I continue watching his channel. So thank you for showing up too. Yeah, so many things to talk about as well with regards to. There's another great announcement, by the way. Sat. Actually, the first time I heard about this new company, but it's a French satellite operator that announced that it is engaged in providing more connectivity for Ukraine because it's alternative to Starlink, and we know that Elon Musk, of course, has been threatening, or at least there's been rumors that Starlink could be completely cut off, right? and that would not be the benefit for Elon Musk if that happened. Imagine it's like as a business when you're literally starting to play geopolitics, that only hurts you. When you start to say, "Oh well, we don't like the way that you conduct business or you conduct politics, we're just gonna turn off, connection." Um, you're gonna lose a lot of contracts and your entire business. So I seriously doubt that Starlink is going to do that, but there's always a possibility. You never know. And we've seen that actually there's been rumors a few years ago where Elon Musk apparently, well, not rumors, but it's been confirmed that he unplugged connectivity in the Black Sea when Ukraine was about to conduct an operation against the Russian Black Sea fleet. Um, and then out of nowhere, they lost connectivity with these USVs, these unmanned sea vessels. And apparently, Elon Musk was behind that. So there's always the risk of him deciding to do that, although very unlikely that he's going to do it throughout the Ukrainian front line. But we're seeing that there is an alternative, which is called OneWeb, that is a competitor to Starlink. And they stated today that it is actively collaborating with European institutions and business partners to continue increasing the offering, increasing the amount of satellites that they're going to be launching. Because right now, unfortunately, they still aren't quite there yet. Starlink has about 7,000 satellites in orbit, and OneWeb has about 700, so 10 times less. So they're planning to build more capacity, launch more satellites, and modernize their offerings. So we're going to see as well more alternatives, and Ukraine's going to have more capabilities as well with regards to connectivity and not being so dependent on Starlink. Thank you for I continue watching you, my friend from Canada. Thank you, Georgie. A huge thank you. He's the reason why I have a big audience of 30,000 plus subscribers. I remember the day where I just uploaded a video back in, I think, October of 2022, and out of nowhere, I ended up with 300,000 views on one of my videos, and I was just in shock. And that was because Ukraine Matters, he recommended my video, and thousands of you guys went to watch it, and I was just shocked. So thank you again for your support, and thank you for supporting not only this channel but also pro-Ukrainian channels, where it be Ukraine Matters or Denis Davidov or gosh, I forgot his name, Starsky, Operator Starsky. There's so many great pro-Ukrainian channels out there, and we need to continue being united, continue being the voice of reason, because there's a lot of disinformation on YouTube. There's a lot of pro-Russian content that's being spread around, and a lot of pro-Russian trolls. These bot farms are actively working at destroying the algorithm, their pro-Ukraine algorithm, and pushing Russian narratives. And you're seeing that whenever, even with what happened Friday, there was a bunch of videos coming out and saying Ukraine is done. Ukraine, is going to collapse. Just watch in a few months, it's going to be over. So we need to be fighting back against this disinformation campaign, which originates from the Kremlin, quite frankly. Hey everybody, hey everyone, of course, yes, American engine sub engineers might have to rethink, retool, or some other creative exercise. True North, strong and free, brave like Ukraine. Thank you, Irene. And Irene, you're one of the first supporters. I remember you. You were one of the first people that subscribed to my channel, so thank you for that. Воля Україні, слава або смерть. Дуже дякую. If US is not global sheriff anymore, then the slogan "Make America Great Again" is a total flop. Yeah, I mean, for them, I don't know what it means anymore to make America great again. The mental gymnastics that the current MAGA voters are playing with, to say that they're still great and relevant. I mean, anyways. Time to cancel some subscriptions. Absolutely. Savage Sage. Yes. Fracas. Yes. I actually recommended that channel. Savage Sage is also a great channel. He's a little bit critical a little bit too critical, but I really enjoyed his video that I share with you guys about Johnny Harris, and when he kind of made that pro-Russian video about why actually Russia's right about NATO expansion. And he gave a total fantastic breakdown of why that is just him running pro-Russian lies, Johnny Harris, of course. So Savage Sage, if you guys haven't subscribed to his channel, please do so because he has a lot of great content. A little bit critical, but I think that it's from a Ukraine perspective, right? The Ukrainians have endured so much that they can see through all the BS. They can see through all of these kind of um, outright lies that some people in the West are willing to swallow. Unfortunately, they're just kind of saying, "Oh, well, maybe Russia has a point here. Maybe NATO did actually expand, and maybe it was too much, and Russia didn't have a choice, right?" And so, yeah, unfortunately, there's many people that can be easily swayed by this pro-Russian disinformation. Garth McKeel, thank you for support. While YouTube is censoring my message, uh, is that the case? I wouldn't be surprised. I've seen certain messages being censored in the past, and we've seen actually, I think a few years ago, the algorithm was censoring pro-Ukraine comments on certain videos and wasn't actually recommending, or if I would upload a video or other pro-Ukraine channels would upload a video, it wouldn't appear in your subscriptions of recent videos uploaded. So yeah, there's of course a lot of manipulation being done, whether it be on X by Elon Musk, of course. It's a new era, as they call it, of techno fascism, right? When you can sway people's opinions and positions by controlling technology and social media, which is exactly what Elon Musk is doing whenever he's commenting at fake reports and news on X with wow or concerning or with the 100 emoji, right? Great input, Elon. But right, that's a way of just swaying opinion and pushing lies. And so we're seeing a new era, as they call it, of techno fascism, which is, of course, playing into Trump's hand, where he can just push his lies. And as I said previously, when did the facts and the truth matter to Trump? They never did. And he's never been playing by the rules. Okay, let's go over other comments. We're close to 1 hour, so I'm gonna probably end the stream around the 1 hour 5-10 minute mark. Um, try to super chat, elbows up, and YouTube won't allow it. Okay, yeah, but thank you for support, Garth. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being Ukraine YouTube channel with no drama. Thank you, Neil. I appreciate it. I don't, you guys know me. I don't do this for the money. I don't do this for the fame. I would be even happy with 5 subscribers, to be honest with you. For me, when I started this channel or started making videos on this channel, it was about just share my opinions. It was kind of a catharsis. If you watch my very first video, I talk about it, why I'm making videos about it. It's a catharsis for me, a release of emotions, of my feelings about how strong I am, how pro-Ukrainian I am here. And I just felt like I needed some platform where I could vent. And thankfully, there's no better way to vent in front of thousands of people that share the same kind of feeling, and we can do so much together as well, right? We are donating, we're pushing pro-Ukraine narratives. Like, don't feel like your voice doesn't matter, guys, because it absolutely does. Whether it be in the workplace, with your family and friends, pushing a pro-Ukraine narrative and having these discussions when they occur. I'm not saying, we need to start talking about Ukraine all the time, but when they happen, it's important to have somebody that can defend the Ukrainian side as well. And whenever you hear a pro-Russian narrative, to also be the opposition to that, like Zelensky did it in the Oval Office when Trump was pushing those outright lies that Putin is a great guy and he cares about peace. And when he said that under my presidency, you know, Russia would never have attacked Ukraine, and yet Zelensky, which is what pissed off Trump, he corrected him. Actually, Mr. Trump, under your presidency from 2017 till 2021, uh, Putin broke the ceasefire 25 times. Trump didn't like that whatsoever, and that's where you saw just the nasty onslaught on Trump, on Zelensky, right? Did you say thank you even once? You're gonna start World War III, and blah blah blah. It was just a horrible crap show. You guys know what I'm trying to say here, but yeah, absolutely crazy what's happening, and it's madness. And it's also going to be interesting today because today, if there's a one last thing I want to mention before I end this live stream, there's going to be a State of the Union by Trump, I think at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And so it'll be interesting to see what more outrageous things Trump is going to say today. And I'm wondering, you guys can let me know in the chat section what kind of wild statements Trump is going to say during his State of the Union later tonight. Germany aims at 1.5 trillion euro investment into defense and economy. Is that so? I haven't read that. Ukraine matters. Okay. Yeah, I mean, massive investments from Europe. I've said it previously, $800 billion that was announced by European Union today to rearm Europe. If it's 1.5 trillion now from Germany itself, that is a huge, huge deal. We know that Germany right now has one of the best defense industries. Ukraine is currently operating, of course, the Panzer Haubitze 2000, the great artillery, self-propelled artillery system, Skynex, the RST air defense systems, of course, the Leopards, the 1 and the 2s, the 2s being the more modern iteration. What is the other thing that they produce that they've been giving to Ukraine? The different types of APCs as well. So Germany is a huge player here, and thank God, the CDU got elected. They will form likely an alliance, a coalition with other governments that will want to be pro-Ukrainian, and that is such great news. I was, in this onslaught of bad negative news in the last few weeks, finally in Europe, one country that has turned more pro-Ukraine than before, because under Schultz, we saw there was weakness, it was uncertainty, it was maybe, maybe not, absolutely not with regards to Taurus missiles. Hopefully, in the next few months, Ukraine will receive those Taurus missiles. We need to also be realistic that Ukraine or Germany doesn't have thousands of these Taurus missiles. If I remember correctly, it's about in the few hundreds. So the impact will not be massive, but Ukraine will put them into great use if they receive them, of course. And we're already seeing that over the last few months, Ukraine has been destroying every single day oil refineries in Russia. Just yesterday alone, Syzran oil refinery in Russia was hit. A few days ago, I think in Ufa, Ukraine shocked again assault by hitting a massive, I think one of the biggest oil refineries located 1,300 kilometers away. You heard that right. 1,300 kilometers away in Ufa. Massive fire in the center of the oil refinery. And Ukraine isn't planning to stop. There's been an announcement today as well that Ukraine will quadruple its production of long range kamikaze drones over the next year. So now not only producing a few dozen per month or a few hundred, but now we're talking about a um, production capabilities that are similar to Russia, thousands of drones per month, right? Because that's what Russia currently is doing with its Shahid drones in Tatarstan, where they're probably producing close to 1,000 drones per month right now with the help of Iran as well. But that is a huge, huge announcement from Germany if they're aiming for 1.5 trillion euro investment into the defense and economy. Well, of course, that includes the economy. So it's not just all defense, but part of it is going to go back to the economy. How to go into Trump's mind, or is he actually controlled by his advisors? I think it's actually the complete opposite. His advisors don't have control over him. And that I apologize. I thought that his actions were rational, they were logical, but they're the complete opposite. They're absolutely irrational. He does everything short term. And when you're the leader of the free world, the most powerful country in the world, you cannot have short-term strategy like Trump does right now. You need to have a long-term strategy and vision over the next 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, what you're trying to achieve. And the American institutions are not built on short-term strategy. They're built for the long term. That's how the US institutions were built. They were built around that framework, that structure. We're not going to do this day by day. We need to know what we're going to have to achieve over the next 2, 4 years, 5 years. So I think that's the complete opposite. And that's where my assumption was wrong. And I apologize again that I thought that his advisors could bring sense to Trump. They could tell him, Mr. Trump, this is a terrible idea. Don't impose tariffs on Canada. Don't impose tariffs on Europe, on Mexico. Don't don't side with Russia. And he's doing that. He's doing the complete opposite. But the silver lining is that he's uniting the other free world, which the US is withdrawing more and more from and making us stronger. Canada is only becoming stronger by the day because of it. Yes, we're going to be hurt right now. Economically speaking, it's going to be very bad if this continues. But we're going to come out stronger in the future because of what Trump is doing right now. He makes us realize that we cannot depend on these forever relations with the United States. And same with Europe and same with many countries around the world. They're realizing that this guarantee, this security guarantee that the United States presented is no longer there. Trump wants Zelensky to get onto his knees and beg before the mighty Trump. Zelensky is going a little way in that direction, just a little. Yeah, but we need to also understand he doesn't have much of a choice. 20 to 25% of the military aid is still coming from the United States. You can't cut that off instantly, right? So Zelensky still needs to play into stroking Trump's ego a little bit, saying that, well, we love the United States, we love Trump, but he needs to see things differently, right? He needs to be very soft about it. He doesn't have a choice, right? Like Ukraine still is very dependent on the United States right now. And hopefully, we're working on a transition over the next few years to have Europe and other Ukrainian allies take that responsibility and be less dependent on the United States. But right now, unfortunately, and again, with regards to the minerals deal, I need to say it again because I've mentioned that in my previous live stream. Right now, what Ukraine is doing is selling air with the minerals deal. Even if that is to be signed tomorrow, do you really think that American industries are going to start digging mines tomorrow in Ukraine, setting up offices in Kiev or other Ukrainian cities, moving their headquarters, building new refineries and processing facilities tomorrow or over the next few months? Absolutely not. This is in the long term, right? We're talking about 5, 10, 15 years down the line. And as a matter of fact, that brings me to another minerals deal that Trump was supposedly trying to sign. He tried to sign with the Taliban or the Afghan government back in 2017. And where did that end up? A few years later, the US completely withdrew. And so there's more and more rumors stating that apparently, Trump was trying to do the same thing, and he was already negotiating with the Taliban with regards to having access to these minerals, while the U.S. completely pulls out as well from its obligations in Afghanistan. So what we're seeing right now is the same thing: is Ukraine is simply just selling air and giving a quick victory for Trump, right? Like Trump wants to claim victory, like under my presidency, I didn't just hand out free checks to Ukraine. I actually forced Ukraine to give us minerals, right? Sleepy Joe would never, Trump would say. And you already can expect this kind of massive narrative of Trump is a winner and Joe was just a sellout. And so that would provide, Trump an easy win. And for Ukraine, it costs nothing right now because 5, 10 years down the line, who knows? Trump is not going to be around, hopefully forever. I can only hope. So, as much as it does suck to hear that pressure from the United States, we also need to see that pressure from the United States. We need to be realistic and understand that right now, Ukraine also needs to kind of play both sides. They can't just say, screw you, US, we don't need you. Patriot missiles, a lot of that weapons assistance, Ukraine is still heavily reliant right now on the United States. So we're going to see a little bit of Zelensky playing both sides right now. Uh, mm, mm, mm. Ukraine can never win this war, however disappointing that it's still a fact. Paul Kirkpatrick. It's debatable, and it depends how you see win. What is the definition for you of winning, of victory for Ukraine? I would say that Ukraine already won the fact that it managed to continue being sovereign and independent in the last 3 years, now heading into its fourth year, against all odds when countries, the United States in February of 2022, said Ukraine doesn't have a chance. Give them 3 days. Then those 3 days moved to 1 week. That 1 week moved to 3 weeks. Oh, surely in a month, Ukraine's going to fall apart. Oh, surely in 3 months, there's no way they can hold out an attrition war against Russia. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and now we're heading to the fourth year. And as I said, Ukraine has never been so strong. Yes, territory has been lost. Most of it has been lost in the beginning of the war. Let's face it, the recent Russian gains in the past year have been very small compared to what they gained back in February, March, and April of 2022. As painful as it is, the cost for the Russians in getting those small villages in Donbass, around Pokrovsk, around Chasiv around Konstantinivka, Zaporizhia Oblast, the cost is immense. We're seeing the Russians. I mean, I'm going to repeat that because it's hilarious. Sad at the same time for the animals, the donkeys, the horses that they're now using to, move their logistics and their supplies to the front line, the cripples, the injured and disabled Russian soldiers. They're forced to storm positions until they die. Is that what you were expecting from Russia in the fourth year of the war? The type of performance from the world's second best and biggest army in the world, right? They were saying a few years ago. Russia's revealed itself to be a complete farce, not to be underestimated, because geopolitically speaking, Russia's done. And I was thinking about it a few months ago, but it's hilarious. Remember 10, 15 years ago, video games and TV series and movies portrayed Russia as this massive power, that they're going to invade the United States, that they're going to invade Europe, and they're going to do it with such ease. We're all going to be stunned. These games and movies don't hold up anymore. Yes, Russia is still a local threat to Europe, right? Any country that is sharing a border with Russia is still under threat because we've seen how absolutely crazy the Russians are, how committed they are to die for Putin, for their Tsar. That have witnessed that. They're still willing to sacrifice millions of people to continue with their imperialistic ambitions, whether it be with Ukraine, with the Baltics, Finland. We're seeing that there is no end in sight for that. And so that is a real threat, and we cannot underestimate the Russians. But in terms of their performance, it's going to be terrible, and they're going to lose a lot more people if they continue with this type of, they continue with their war in Ukraine. So yeah, it depends how you see things, Paul. I see it as a victory for Ukraine to be able to hold out against a massive zombie army called Russia, or country called Russia. Preach. Thank you, Ukraine Matters. Appreciate it. Heroям слава, смерть ворогам. Slava Ukraini. Thank you. Bye Canadian. Bye bye America. Yeah, as I said, it sucks. I really don't want to be doing this. I want to have close ties with the United States. As I said, I canceled my trip to New York for this month. I didn't want to do it, but I had to. I don't want to be going to a hostile country right now. And so hopefully there's going to be some sense that's going to be brought back in the United States over the next few months. And I'm inclined to believe that right now, the reason why we're not seeing much opposition is that the Democrats and the American opposition right now is allowing this kind of honeymoon phase to pass, which is usually the 100 days, right? The 100 days, first 100 days of presidency is usually kind of this honeymoon phase for the Americans. And so they're allowing Trump to do as much damage as possible so they can do a counter attack. I'm hoping, this is my wishful thinking, I could be extremely wrong here, but I'm hoping that the Democrats are going to completely unite over the next few weeks and go on the counteroffensive, because right now time is of the essence. And after that 100 days, American institutions are going to, I mean, right now it's already devastating what Trump and Elon Musk are doing with Doge and the thousands of jobs that they're cutting. Innocent workers, government workers being caught in the crosshairs of an idiot called Elon Musk, who's not even an American citizen. He's from South Africa, right? And he technically doesn't have any right to do what he's doing right now. Nobody's questioning it in the Republican Party. As a matter of fact, they're preaching what Elon Musk is doing. But again, there's been so many mess ups. There was a story, I think, a week or two ago where he fired 2,000 workers that were in charge of the US nuclear security umbrella, only to realize, oh, that was a huge F up and we need to rehire them back. And that is only one example of several of what Elon Musk is doing. Oh, sorry, we should not have fired you. Can you come back, please? A person that dedicated his life to the US, that doesn't matter much for Trump and his gang of crooks, unfortunately. Elon had Canadian citizenship, hopefully revocable. Yeah, I heard about this. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But then, then again, it would set a precedent that thankfully, if a nation doesn't like somebody, they can just revoke their citizenship. So, but with Elon Musk, I would be happy to make an exception for that situation, where he has no business. He apparently he also said when Canada won against the United States, and Trudeau tweeted in the hockey game of the Four Nations tournament, and Trudeau, he was just waiting for that tweet of saying, "You can't take our nation, you can't take our game." And then I think Elon Musk tweeted back saying, Canada is not even a real country. And he had to delete that a few days later because of the backlash. So, anyways, I think he tweeted that because of that petition. Actually, it's the petition of over 200, 300,000 Canadians saying, please revoke Elon's citizenship, Canadian citizenship. And then he says, whatever, Canada's not even a real country. But the level of disrespect just coming from this US administration is something that is going to be remembered in history books, and hopefully in a negative light, of course. Okay, they want to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, also veteran benefits. I mean, that is insane, Cheryl. Yeah, I heard about it. Just cutting everything that makes America great, right? The people that veterans, the people that sacrificed, their lives, their bodies for the US, and that's how they're being treated by Trump. You don't need those benefits. You don't need support. You were expendable. How's that any different from Putin and how he treats Russian soldiers? Agent Krasnov, as they call Trump now, is again continuing with his 4D chess, right? It's all part of a bigger plan, making America great again, he says. It's at 361,000 right now. Do you mean the job cuts? Because that's absolutely crazy. Um, less than 2 months, and if that's the actual number, close to 400,000 federal workers being cut. Look, I want to say that I understand that there might be a need for efficiency, right? We do understand that in the West, um, bureaucracy is massive and often very bloated. And with that, I understand the importance of making things more efficient, perhaps cutting here and there. But the way that Elon Musk and Trump is going about it with Doge is inhumane. It's absolutely a travesty what they're doing, right? And as I've given you an example with the 2,000 workers that are in charge of this nuclear security of the United States that were fired, only to find out that they were actually important and to be rehired back a few days later. I mean, that is just one example of several of the huge um, problems that are occurring right now because there's no analysis. There's no true analysis of take a look where we can cut, where we can kind of cut the fat, if I may say it like that. That would take months, if not a few years, to really start developing an actual program of efficiency. What we're seeing right now is an Elon Musk that's given axe or sledgehammer and just demolish everything left and right. Go ahead, buddy. Right? The house is yours to demolish. That's how he's going about. Unfortunately, it's unconstitutional. Yeah, Aussie, I agree with you. And so right now, they're really pushing their luck right now. The Trump administration is doing everything possible right now to destabilize the United States and turning into complete chaos. And Project 2025, I think, is part of that massive blueprint. They're following that Project 2025 blueprint, unfortunately. Something I talked about in the last a few weeks ago. Okay, so I think that's the live stream for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I've talked a lot about different things. Of course, the Zelensky meeting with Trump last Friday, unity that we're seeing more and more between Europeans and Ukraine, which is absolutely important. So continue to support Ukraine. The best way you can is, of course, by donating to the different drone funds. My favorite one is Ternenko Rusoriz, and I have a link in the description below where you can actually give your donations. There's also Wild Hornets. They're also a great producer of FPV drones. They're the reason why right now Ukraine is able to successfully defend against these massive Russian hordes. So we need to continue supporting that the best way we can. So thank you guys again. I hope you enjoy your evening. I'm going to probably watch the State of the Union at 9 p.m. Eastern time. The State of the Union by Trump. It's going to be interesting. We'll see what he says. And who knows? Maybe the U.S. might have to learn what the Maidan revolution was back in 2014. Because if this continues to be the case and Trump continues to shoot himself in the United States in the foot like that, um, a Maidan revolution might be needed in the United States in the next few months. I don't know. And I'm not even joking right now. I really hope that's not going to be the case. I hope there's going to be a peaceful resolution, a democratic resolution. But right now, things are not looking good in the United States whatsoever. With all that, guys, thank you so much. Дуже дякую. Слава Україні.